From the border to the bush, this is ABC Southern Queensland.
You know, you and I live in an incredibly beautiful part of the world, but there is a caveat that goes with that because our city of Toowoomba is on an escarpment with mountain views and a lot of vegetation. There is, of course, a greater risk of bushfire, and we saw that. We saw how quickly bushfires can take off and gain momentum in that sort of territory back in 2019, end of 2019, the Crow's Nest Peachy bushfire north of Toowoomba. And, of course, depending on how long you've lived in this part of the world, if you go back to around about 2002, bushfires were literally licking the doormats of properties in the Toowoomba suburb of Prince Henry Heights. The risk is always there, and it's very, very real every summer. Tonight, the Toowoomba Escarpment Bushfire Preparation Project is launching Are We Prepared at the North Toowoomba Bowls Club. You can go along from 6 p.m. Lee Johnson is guest speaker. Lee is former Queensland Fire Commissioner. He joins me now for a chat. Lee Johnson, good morning. Welcome.
Yes, good morning, David.
Lee, I appreciate your time this morning. What's the main message that you want to get across at tonight's forum? You've seen, I guess, the worst that Mother Nature can dish up given the right conditions in an area like the escarpment. What do you want people to know?
Well, I want to, first of all, support the great work that the Save Mount Lofty group has done through this Toowoomba Escarpment Bushfire project, because there is no greater power in dealing with a natural hazard like this than an informed and proactive community. Having community members aware of what needs to be done in the lead-up and certainly what needs to be done during a natural disaster emergency is absolutely critical. So it's really offer my support and offer some ideas about further mitigation activities and preparedness activities.
In your experience, and I would imagine, can I ask just to sort of set that scene, how long have you been retired for, Lee?
I officially finished at the end of July 2015, so about 6 years. And since that time, I've obviously been involved with a group called Emergency Leaders for Climate Action, which is drawing attention to the 2019-20 upcoming fire season, which unfortunately turned out to be all too true. As well, I've been involved for quite a number of years now as a board member on the Bushfire and Natural Hazards Cooperative Research Centre. So I've been quite active and quite involved since retirement.
So I suppose, obviously with your involvement in those groups, you stay with your finger on the pulse of how preparations are going and how cognizant the public is about the risk and about the role that they play in minimising that risk. But I guess there's two levels of that, what local government does to minimise the risk and what residents do. But can I ask your thoughts on what residents do? Firstly, do you think that now we are becoming more vigilant and more aware that, we need to actually do a lot in our own homes, in our own backyards to minimise the risk of bushfires, or do we still have a long way to go there?
Yes, well, for Queenslanders, the number one natural hazard risk has really been flooding, generally as a result of cyclones, but flooding and storms. And bushfire, whilst also being a common occurrence, hasn't had the same intensity or cut-through as in the southern states. Now, what we're seeing, of course, with climate change is that hazard category, in my opinion, is now ramping up the charts, as they say, in Queensland. So the need for Queenslanders to become far more adept and aware of the effects and what happens around bushfires is steadily, even rapidly, changing in my view, and that's where we need community members to play their part. Local government, state government, fire services, the land-owning government agencies all need to do their bit. But the most important thing in terms of particularly life safety and then property protection is for landholders and homeowners to play their role in keeping their property safe.
I'm interested that you, maybe I'm hearing you incorrectly, but I'm interested that it sounds like you're saying that the landowner or the homeowner's role is almost most important, and yet I guess local government, other agencies, the landowner's role only really, I guess, comes into play if the bushfire gets literally, too close for comfort to the homes, and yet government and other agencies are responsible for really keeping the vegetation down so that the bushfire doesn't even get to that stage. Surely they've got a greater role to play.
They do, and one of the things that occur, that a lot of people think the fire service is totally responsible. Well, the fire service doesn't own any land. And the maxim that's always been true in Australia, really, but say for Queensland, is the person who owns the land certainly owns the fire risk. And in that case, of course, local government, state government own an awful lot of land. So therefore, their responsibility is great. If you take the escarpment and think about, as we move northward along the escarpment, right out through Highfield, Hampton, up to Crow's Nest, the property sizes get bigger. And of course, the problem for the property owner gets bigger along with that. So whilst we're talking about a lot of responsibility for community, the other responsibility, not just to protect your physical asset, but knowing what to do on a bad day. When that emergency warning is broadcast by the ABC to say, leave now, you need to have practiced and rehearsed for your family what to do on that bad day, because that's what will save your life. So keeping your house safe is obviously a high priority for all of us, but keeping your family safe is an even higher priority, and that's where the community, the individual role becomes prominent.
And if we look back to 2019 and the Crow's Nest Peachy bushfires, did that prove that people had made that plan and people did get out in time?
In many cases, yes. What a maxim that I also used to use was, in Queensland, we used to have we still do, I think, have great difficulty in getting people's attention in their busy lives unless there was smoke in the air. And that's what I was talking about earlier, where the hazard of bushfire in Queensland is not seen in the same way as it is in Victoria and New South Wales. And that's what's changing. Because fundamentally, if you live on the escarpment or in bushland, you have flammable fuel right at your front door. And we need to know how to deal with that and manage that. And of course, one of the great problems for us all is when drought sets in, the chances of large-scale catastrophic fires just escalates incredibly. So it is just not just simply being aware, but also being aware enough to take individual action and have a good, well-thought-out plan for your household, and also doing what you can to protect your property from ember attack.
Lee Johnson is my guest. He's former Queensland Fire Commissioner and is speaking at an event in Toowoomba this evening just on minimising the risk with the up-and-coming bushfire season, particularly with regards to people who live on or have homes in the vicinity of the Toowoomba Escarpment. Lee, I'm nearly out of time, but I'm just on that. Are we at risk this year, this bushfire season, of being a bit complacent because we have had rain and, even though drought declaration is still in place for the majority of the areas where it was in place for prior to this, recent rain events, people might be inclined to think, well, the bushfire risk is less. Is that a valid belief, or do people have to be wary of that?
I think it is a belief that some people will have. I think bushfire understanding and awareness is a 12-month occupation. Certainly the local weather and what's happening is a key factor, but that doesn't minimise the need for you to be thinking about it and prepared. Some seasons, obviously, the bushfire risk doesn't manifest itself. So it's about monitoring and about understanding the environment in which you live and your local community. That's why it's important to be connected, for example, with local rural fire brigades. There's plenty of town hall type meetings in various districts where people can be brought up to date fairly quickly and easily about what the local risk factor is, so that awareness level. It doesn't take a lot of time, but even looking at the QFIS website, for example, Queensland Fire and Emergency Services website provides a lot of current information about localities, and that's what I would advise people to do, to have it not as a immediate threat and danger all the time in your mind, but to have it there in the back of your mind and pull it out fairly regularly to just update your own self about the environment that you're living in.
Lee Johnson, great to talk to you this morning. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, David.
Thanks very much. Lee Johnson there, former Queensland Fire Commissioner, speaking tonight at the Toowoomba Escarpment Bushfire Preparation Project, launching Are We Prepared? It's a seminar or a forum, if you like, happening at the North Toowoomba Bowls Club from 6 p.m. If you missed those details, give us a call. We'll pass them on. It's 2 to 8.